Dear friends in Korea, I'm very honored to be invited to speak at the opening event of the K Family Festival in Seoul 2023. I would love to be there in person, and I'm thankful for the technology that allows us to communicate across time and space. Nothing is more important in our time than to rebuild the family. Family has always been and will always be the social organism of father, mother, and children, plus the larger extended family of blood relationships in the vertical dimension of the generations and the horizontal dimension of uncles and aunts and nieces and nephews. Family is the basic unit of society on which the state is built. Family comes first, the state is second. If the family is destabilized, the society will fall apart and the state will become totalitarian in response to the social chaos that is created by destroying the family. The attack on the family is in the center of the sexual revolution of the last 50 years. Within half a century, the blooming Western civilization, built on the moral foundation of Christianity, has become a culture of death. The birth rates in all Western nations are below replacement level, in Europe as well as in Asia. South Korea and Japan are at the forefront of this development. South Korea holds the sad record of the lowest birth rate of the world, and it is still dropping. In 2021, it was 0.81 children per woman. In Seoul, it is a shocking 0.59 children per woman. 2.1 is the replacement level. The program of this conference calls it for what it is: mass suicide. We look into a bleak abyss. In the 1960s, when the contraceptive hormonal pill became available, the birth rate began to plummet below replacement very quickly. The political leaders of the nations and of the global organizations were united in the aim to reduce world population. The split between sex and fertility through contraception, abortion, homosexuality, and the sexualization of children destabilize the family and lead to a decrease of the birth rate. How did this come about? What are the factors of the destruction of the family? The first point, turning away from God and denying the divine order. This is at the root of the culture of death. The European culture, exported to the whole world as a model for the dignity of the human person, unparalleled cultural achievements and technical progress, was built on Christianity and the 10 Commandments. Our epoch is characterized by the breakdown of worship and the replacement of God through materialistic idols. Man has become his own God. This is the primordial temptation since the serpent tempted Eve and Adam in the Garden of Eden. This conference calls people to return to right living, respecting the order of creation. The second factor, the overturning of moral limitations of sexual activity. Turning away from God allowed the sexual revolution to sweep this earth, beginning in the 1960s. Stripping sexual activity from all moral limitations destroys the integrity of the person the family, and the whole of society. In 1934, J.D. Unwin, an Oxford scholar and anthropologist, published the book Sex and Culture. This is what he found. High culture depends on strict sexual morality, that is, virginity before marriage and monogamy. When a culture gives up confining sexuality to marriage, it steps down from the stage of history within a few generations. This is the process we are in. J.D. Unwin foresaw the decline of culture. Through sexual demoralization, he did not foresee mass suicide through the drop of the reproduction rate far below replacement level. These are the effects of the demoralization of sexuality. Sex and procreation are systematically disjoined through contraception and abortion. The ideal of love realized in marriage and family is shattered. Unfaithfulness of a married couple leads to separation and divorce. If family breaks down, the next generation is deprived of love and security, which are needed to bring up healthy and achieving adults willing to take on the responsibility of parenthood. If young people are intentionally sexualized from kindergarten onwards, they will lose the ideal and the character strength to realize the vision of love. The third factor, the ideologies of the sexual revolution. Before society changes its basic value system, mass consciousness must be changed. This is achieved through ideas. If these ideas are false and not in accordance with the truth of man and the order of creation, we call them an ideology. Revolutionary ideas arise in the minds of intellectuals, but they can only change society if they are put into operation by the powers of money and political power. The ideas of the sexual revolution have a long history. Here we can only mention the main contributors of our time: socialism, hedonism, feminism, and genderism. All the promoters of the sexual revolution are socialist atheists. In the last century, there were ardent followers of communist ideology. In our century, we have a new alliance of socialists and super capitalists. Socialism. The Communist Manifesto proclaimed that the first class antagonism was between man and woman in marriage. Therefore, marriage should be annihilated, women should join the workforce, children should be brought up in collective care. This was the socialist model to destroy the family. Since the turn of the millennium, Western society has adopted it voluntarily. Hedonism. That is the idea that the highest aim of human existence is the satisfaction of lust. This was promoted by the Frankfurt School of Philosophy. Hedonism was proclaimed as the road to a paradisical society. Herbert Marcuse was one of those so-called prophets. But sexual activity, unrestrained by moral limitations, leads into sexual addiction and an abyss of sexual abuse of one's own body and the body of another person. The worldwide promotion of pornography, billions of people are addicted to it, is a sign for that. Feminism. Radical feminism, initiated by Simone de Beauvoir, saw history as a patriarchal suppression of women. Feminism demanded emancipation of women from male suppression, especially sexual emancipation, denying the life-giving identity of women as mothers. Feminist women derive their self-esteem and social recognition from paid work and power, as do men, not from the joy and sacrifice of motherhood. A society that does not honor the mother has no future. Genderism denies the binary structure of the human being as either man or woman. The trumpet for gender ideology was blown by the US philosopher Judith Butler with her work, Gender Trouble, Feminism and the Subversion of Identity. She saw male and female sexual identity as a matter of performance that could be changed any time. As a lesbian, she promoted homosexuality. In her eyes, incest was an appropriate measure to break down the family. In fact, the taboo of incest had to be broken in order to break down the family. Judith Butler is a member of the Rockefeller Foundation, and she received highest awards from US and European universities. Her reality-denying theories have been adopted by the United Nations and the European Union, that triumphed in the universities of the Western world and are planted into the heart of children from kindergarten onwards. The idea of the voluntary choice of one's sexual identity within a continuum of limitless sexual identities gave rise to the transgender movement. Gender dysphoria, as it is now called, the sense that the mind is imprisoned in the wrong body, has exploded during the last 10 years, especially amongst girls during puberty. Reckless doctors prescribe puberty-delaying hormones and the surgical removal of their breasts. Our society allows the mutilation of healthy bodies of young people in the service of sexual idols. But there is an awakening. Norway, Finland, Sweden, and Great Britain have prohibited hormonal and surgical sex change operations for people under 18. The idea that one can voluntarily choose one's sexual identity is an attack on the foundation of feminism. It has brought division to the LGBTQ and the feminist movement. If there are no biological women, they cannot proclaim special rights and quotas. But women do not want to compete with men who say they are women in sports. They do not want to share bathrooms with them, and they do not want to be in a prison ward with male rapists. The implementation of ideologies. These ideologies were implemented in society with amazing speed. It is a top-down revolution driven by the global elites of power and money. The legal foundation of Western society is in a process of constant adaptation to gender ideology. What was forbidden and restricted by law up to the 1970s became legalized step by step in the nations of this world. Pornography, prostitution, divorce, abortion, homosexuality, same-sex marriage, transsexuality, and the indoctrination and sexualization of children by force of state. Are we better off? Are people happier? Do we have more freedom? The answer to all these questions is no. Yet there is no halt and no reversal. The revolution proceeds at a different pace in the nations. South Korea was rather late when the Constitutional Court legalized abortion up to week 14 in 2019, denying the right of life of the unborn child. It is also late in legalizing same-sex marriage. On June the 1st, 2023, this month, the Parliament of South Korea embarked on the course of confounding the institution of marriage with the first draft law for same-sex so-called marriage. Be aware. Soon, rainbow flags will flutter from public buildings, and your children will be taught in kindergarten that 2 men and 2 women can be parents of a child, and that man can have babies. Your daughter or your son will be indoctrinated with the idea that they can change their sex. And parents are being blackmailed that their child would commit suicide if they do not allow them to mutilate their body and take puberty-delaying hormones. It is strange. Although nations face demographic suicide, they continue to adopt laws that accelerate the process by decreasing fertility through abortion, homosexuality, transgender, and the sexualization of children. Ideas can be changed. Laws can be changed. Abortion facilities can be closed through prayer vigils. People can change. Yet, there seems to be a point of no return once demographic decline has fallen below 1.8 children per woman. We get what we have chosen and what the global powers intended: sex without fertility leading to population reduction. Nature reacts. According to the World Health Organization, around 10% of couples are permanently biologically infertile. But the main factor for demographic decline is the invisible epidemic of unplanned childlessness. In Korea, childlessness of women has increased since 1990 from 19% to 40%. 5% of the women of our time don't want to have children. Yet 30 to 35% do want to have children. But first, they want to be successful in their career, earn a lot of money, and before they know it, they have missed the time window for partnership and childbearing in their life. All the factors which we have looked at above have led to this dramatic situation. The speakers of this conference will probably show what practical consequences this will have for the pension system, the social welfare, for economic welfare. The most serious personal consequences are loneliness, depression, the loss of meaning of life. Once nations have given up the notion of the sacredness of human life by legalizing the killing of unborn children, euthanasia of old people will be inevitable. It is skyrocketing in nations like Belgium and the Netherlands, where it was legalized 20 years ago. What are the practical consequences? What does this mean for us living in this moment of history? The factors of destruction of the family are, I repeat, turning away from God, destructive ideologies, and their implementation. That means for us, we have to turn to God, turn away from false ideas, and implement the right ideas in our own life. God is the master of history. He has a plan, and he cares for his creatures. Whatever your religion and faith, all religions teach men and women to use their free will to choose good. Our primal duty in this life is to care for our family, for our children, and for our parents when they are old. This will give meaning to our life. It will save us from depression and ending our life in loneliness and poverty. We have been influenced by the destructive ideologies mentioned above. Let us listen to the desire of our heart and return to common sense. Ideologies cannot bear to be confronted with the truth, so our religious and democratic freedoms are more and more constrained. Most people do not agree with ideologies that deny the binary structure of human existence as man and woman, but they have been silent far too long. We need to overcome our tendency to hide in the mainstream and be willing to make sacrifices for the truth of man in order to protect our children. This needs courage guided by wisdom. The desire of our heart is to love and be loved, to have a family and children. Therefore, we need to respect each other as man and woman with our specific complementary gifts. If demoralization of sexuality is the main cause of the breakdown of family and the demographic decline, the concept is as clear as it is difficult to live sex only within the lifelong marriage of a man and a woman. Radical evil must be confronted with radical good. This we have to teach to our children. The virtue of chastity can only be achieved by moral education of the young generation. It is not a matter of prohibitions, but of transmitting the vision of a happy life by realizing the heart's desire for true love. We must fight for the innocence of our children and imbue them with the vision of marriage and family by our own example. We need fathers respected by their wives who fulfill their primary responsibility to protect their family. There's one nation in Europe that has seriously converted to Christian values, to God, nation, and family. This is Hungary under the government of Viktor Orban. Since 2010, families are supported by a host of measures: reduction of taxes according to the number of children, subsidies for house and car, full salary for a mother with baby, banning homosexual and transsexual indoctrination of children at school. Since this policy contradicts the pro-LGBT, pro-abortion, and anti-family course of the European Union, Hungary is constantly persecuted by the European Union. The outcome of the family policy of Hungary is amazing. 50% more marriages, 30% less abortions, 25% fewer divorces. And the main outcome, the birth rate increased from 1.3 to 1.6 children per woman. This is still far below replacement, but it demonstrates that a reversal of a trend is possible. I come to the end. The destiny of the human race is in the hands of God. He has a plan for humanity and for each and every person. Each one of us can step out of the sexual revolution and lead a virtuous life. Whatever the course of history might be, we must make every effort to raise our children to become pioneers of a new, viable society. The forces of evil seem overwhelming, but God, nature, and reason are on our side.